Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. Jazz fans, I am truly delighted to present today's podcast guest because every once in a while I'm in the mood for some really good jazz, and this ensemble is absolutely fabulous. Jazz Weekly says vintage sounds, rich, suave, uptown hip. The fingers are a snapping to the tunes. They just released their 8th album called All In. We'll feature some music from that album and their previous albums as well, too. The band is called the Verve Jazz Ensemble, and from that we have the drummer, Josh Feldstein. How you doing, Josh?
Great to see you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Josh, I've been excited to do this interview ever since you sent the music a couple weeks back. It's really great tunes, man. I really like that. First off, let's talk about the origins of how the Verve Jazz Ensemble was assembled, and we'll talk about the members of the band.
We were originally a local group in the Danbury, Connecticut area. We formed the group in 2006. And at the time, frankly, we were just a bunch of local guys who loved jazz, and we began playing in restaurants and country clubs and the like. I formed the group and gave it a name called the Verve Jazz Ensemble, very innocently on the basis of the fact that when I was younger as a drummer, I loved the music of the Verve record label. And they represented an era of jazz that to me was really influential. And so when I formed a group paying homage really to the label, I named the group the Verve Jazz Ensemble, never imagining that we would end up with national or international following.
Very good. Let's talk about the members of the band. Who comprises the current lineup for the jazz ensemble?
Well, the group has been very steady over the many years. John Blank is our tenor saxophonist and an original member of the group back to 2006. Our bassist is Elias Bailey. Elias has been with us now for 7 albums. On the front with John is our trumpet and also executive producer of the current album, Tatum Greenblatt. On the front, we also have Willie Applewhite on trombone, Alexa Tarantino on alto and flute, and our pianist in the current album is Matt Ostreicher, and Matt has also been with us for many, many years and actually recorded the very first album with us back in 2012.
Very good. This is album number 8. How does it differ from the previous 7 albums?
Well, the band has evolved. Bands do change. They become more cohesive. Everybody gets to know the strengths and the proclivities of the other band members. We begin writing more to the style and feel of the various instrumentalists. And the communication becomes very, very psychic. You don't really have to talk about stuff. You can just play. And you know where things are going. You can feel it, and the waves of energy as you're performing live or as you're recording in the studio, they take over, and you just allow the improvisation to carry the group. Everybody has confidence really in the direction of a song and confidence in the other band members. So over the course of 8 years, we've really become far more cohesive, but we've also extended our reach. Although we play a lot of straight ahead and Latin, we have gotten into a number of originals, and Tatum Greenblatt, John Blank have taken a lead on most of the originals that we are performing over the last several albums. I've written some. So we enjoy taking a shot at some originals mixed in with all the standards in Latin that we play.
Very good, very good. Now, the first song that we're going to feature from the brand new album is the title track, All In. Composition written by your trumpet player, Tatum Greenblatt. What's the backstory on how this all came to be the title cut of the album?
This is a tune that Tatum wrote some years ago. And Rick, what's interesting about it is, unbeknownst to me, he wrote it as sort of a jitterbug tune. And I really hadn't heard the original version of his composition. He'd recorded it some years ago with another organization. And he said to me for this new album, since we were going to focus on sort of mid-century Americana for the All In album, that was the theme really of what we're doing. We'll talk about that. He updated All In to be really a big band piece, but if you listen to it, it's got a number of different sections that if you hear the jitterbug influence in the back of your mind, you say, yes, I can hear the jitterbug thing in All In. The drum beat and the various segues, it's pretty apparent. So we found the energy of this particular tune to be infectious, and we used it as the title tune of the album.
Great, get your toes a tapping for sure. All right, here's the latest from the brand new album called All In. Here's the title cut from the Verve Jazz Ensemble featuring today's podcast guest, Josh Feldstein. again from the Verve Jazz Ensemble featuring today's podcast guest, Josh Feldstein. Now, before we continue, I'd like to say thank you so much for tuning in to the Someone You Should Know podcast. We are on the web at Someoneyoushouldknowpodcast.com. There you'll find recent news, archive of past episodes, and a whole lot more. By the way, if you're there, do us a big favor and leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing, okay? And we want to thank so many people listening all around the world. Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, thanks for listening today. Also, Naples, Florida, and Hartford, Connecticut, thanks so much for tuning in. As we get back to Josh Feldstein and the Verve Jazz Ensemble. Now, Josh, a while back, we were talking about some of the members of your band and what they do. We were also talking about the writing process somewhat. Now, when it actually comes to getting together and composing and writing some stuff, do you guys just start riffing, or does someone actually bring in some material? How does the whole writing process happen for the ensemble?
The musicians are really adept on many, many levels. They're instructors. They participate in a wide range of educational programs. And as part of just being a musician, music enters your awareness. Tunes that are meaningful get captured. And if somebody's got a melody or something that they're working on that they particularly like, they'll say, hey, I'm working on something and it goes like this, and let me put a little something together so that you can react to it. And those little snippets, they may be 60 seconds with a couple of ideas, and they'll lay it down and we'll listen to it and say, interesting. How about we go here, we do that, it's this tempo, it's going to be that vibe, it'll be this genre. We talk about the instrumentation and structure. And if we can get somewhere that feels good, then the assignment is given, go ahead, write the chart. And we'll typically iteratively go back and forth on that, 2, 3, 5, 7 times. Usually it doesn't take that long. I mean, a piece comes together relatively quickly. And that really is the genre of it. Everybody has their own shtick. So, John writes to a particular thing. He's got this broken 4/4, kind of funky, very contemporary thing that he likes to do. Tatum's all over the place. He can be straight ahead. He can be something that's very, very polyrhythmic. He can be something that's very contemporary. I tend to be more straight ahead in the stuff that I hear. So we've all got our own sort of orientation, and that's how it plays out.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, here's the thing I always wanted to know when it comes to instrumentals. When time comes for song titles, most lyricists usually use the hook of the song or maybe a line from the chorus or something like that. Instrumentals don't have any lyrics, so how do you guys come up with your song titles?
Well, when you envision a song, when you hear a song, it evokes an emotion. It evokes some kind of a state of awareness of something, right? It's a feeling, it's a story, it's a location, it's people you're with, and all of those things sort of evolve into putting a name on it, right? So I wrote a tune called Jumping on the Couch, and my kids were younger, and I was playing this thing, and it was like playing this, the kids started jumping up on the couch. I was like, okay, that's the name of that tune. It's that kind of thing.
Very good. A good friend of mine who is a jazz guitarist, guy by the name of Lino out of Oregon. One of the songs that he had that I absolutely love was called Chardonnay Afternoon. And I'm going, how did you get this one? He says, well, I was drinking a glass of Chardonnay with a friend in the afternoon, and we were listening to the song, and that's where the song title came from. Simple as that. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Another song we're going to feature is my personal favorite, and it's actually from the 2017 album called Swingin' Nova, a catchy one from Dizzy Gillespie's catalog called Tintin Deo. It is a real workout for you and Steve Einerson on piano and Elias Bailey on bass. What's the backstory of including this great song from the 50s?
Well, this is a 12/8 Dizzy Gillespie piece. And I particularly like, the whole Afro-Cuban 12/8 vibe as a drummer. I enjoy that groove very much. Steve Einerson really likes this particular song as well. And so we worked on this, and we found that the trio structure for this particular song gave us the most latitude creatively. And so off we went. I laid down this Afro-Cuban groove. Steve gets into it, and we just take off. The Dizzy Gillespie tune originally, if you listen to it, it's far more, the original is far more structured, and it doesn't really open up like this. This is what happens, 40, 50 years after a composition is released. You sort of go to town on it. You go wherever you want. You take those liberties, and so we did. I hope Dizzy doesn't mind.
I don't think anyone will mind because it's a great song. Tin Tin Deo from the amazing Verve Jazz Ensemble featuring today's podcast guest, Josh Feldstein. Tintin Deo from the amazing Verve Jazz Ensemble, featuring today's podcast guest, Josh Feldstein. By the way, down in the show notes, I've included the link to the live performance of that video to that song. So I want you to go ahead and check that out. You'll love it just as much as I do. Also, down in the show notes, we'll get all the social links to where we can find out a little bit more about the Verve Jazz Ensemble. What's some good websites or some links that everyone's on there, Josh?
Verve-jazz.com. That's our URL. Visit, make sure you become a member of our mailing list. You can find us on Spotify, all the major streaming services. Wherever you want to find music, you'll find the Verve Jazz Ensemble.
Very good. You're also on Facebook. Are you on Instagram too, or what?
Yes.
All those. Okay, very good. So most of the socials, just look for, I guess, Verve Jazz Ensemble?
To be honest with you, I don't have the handles for Instagram off the top of my head. But
not a problem.
I can promise you, if you go to our website, you'll find the links for everything.
Very good. We'll have them down in the show notes. I'll do the research and I'll put them in the show notes. You have a very big event coming up in just a couple of weeks, a vibrant outdoor concert venue in Worcester, Massachusetts, coming up on the 25th of August. Jazz at Sunset at the Hanover Theater. Can you tell us about this event if anyone happens to be in that area?
Well, we are looking forward to this enormously. We were invited by the NPR affiliate in Boston, WICN, in collaboration with the Hanover Theater in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I think this is like the 6th annual Jazz at Sunset concert, Rick. They basically take over the parking lot between the radio station and the theater, and they convert it into an outdoor amphitheater.
Wow.
And they bring in food trucks, and they've got a cash bar and the whole thing. And they set up VIP tables right in front of the bandstand. You know, it's on risers and so forth. And there's going to be somewhere between 500 and 700 people in attendance. Typically, it's a fabulous show. We're really looking forward to it. We're playing 2 sets, 6 p.m. and then I think about 7. And if you go to our website, there's a link. You can go to WICN, or you can go to the Hanover Theater for more information on tickets and so forth. And I can give you the links. You can put it in the description below.
Very good. We'll have them down in the show notes. And we hope that you have good weather for that, where it's not 100 degrees or 2 or 3 inches of rain, because that area has gotten some really bad weather over the summer. This next feature is something we love to do, especially when we have musicians. It's called Tales from the Road. This is those infamous road stories of things that don't particularly go quite as planned when you go to a venue. Would you say would be your personal Tales from the Road?
There are many.
Give us a couple.
I'll pick one that was a particularly good one. And Christian McBride had something to do with it, although I've never met Christian and he's never heard the story. But here's the way it goes. Our group had a show in Manhattan, and we were going to record video and audio the show, and it was going to be as our septet. 3 days before the event, my trombonist Willie calls me up and he's like, "Josh, I'm really sorry, man, but Christian McBride just called, and he's got a problem. He needs a sub on his trombone." And I couldn't say no to Christian. I had to. I was like, "You mean so we're not gonna lose you for the show because you're gonna sub for Christian?" He's like, "Dude, man, I gotta." It's like, "Okay, Willie, but what are we gonna do?" He's like, "I got somebody. It'll be terrific. I've got somebody." Okay, fine. So he's gonna get a sub. He's gonna sub, and then he's gonna get somebody to sub him. This is the music industry.
Yeah, of course, yes.
So we show up at the club, and everybody's getting together. We're all dressed. We're ready with the energy. And I'm looking around. I'm like, "Where are the cameras? When are they going to show up with the cameras? Where's the microphone? Where's the stuff?" And and nothing's happening. And I'm thinking to myself, so I speak to the management, and they look at me and they say, "What are you talking about?"
Oh,
I said, we're recording tonight. This video, it's in the contract. He was like, "I didn't know that." So the whole thing, craps out. And everybody's like, "Oh, man." They're all kind of, a little bit whacked out because it was a real buzzkill. the sub comes, I'm not going to say names, the sub comes on the trombone, and we are like, okay, ready to go. And he's like, got it, ready to go, everything's terrific. Anyway, he really didn't play very well.
Oh, no.
Didn't know the music. There were a number of tunes that were trombone features, just completely like, love them.
Yeah.
He was standing right in front of me on the bandstand, and there was nowhere to go. I heard everything that wasn't happening. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm so glad there are no cameras.
Yeah, there you go. It's a blessing in disguise, I guess you would say. Yeah. All right. Very good. Do you in the band have any rituals before you perform in front of a live audience? Is there any particular thing you guys do? A band meeting, say a prayer, take a shot, anything like that?
I'm going to disappoint you and say no. I think part of the reason is that everybody's performed so much that it's pretty natural to just walk on stage and start playing. And that's kind of the ritual. Depending upon the venue, we'll be in the green room, people will have something to eat. Occasionally, somebody's going to start making some notes about ahead, or some solo ideas or something, in the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes before. People are sort of wandering around, getting ready. There's a little bit of butterflies, or there's just excitement or whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty mellow, and off we go.
Awesome. Very good. That's always great. You can tell the sign of a professional. You get an individual who's constantly tuning their instrument, like for 5 or 6 minutes. It's like, I don't know if they're ready or not. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. The reason why I brought up that question was years and years ago, I was talking with Trace Adkins, country singer, and he says before he goes on stage, he always has a cup of coffee and one last cigarette. So it makes me wonder what the microphone smells like.
Oh, man.
Okay. Any closing thoughts that we should know about the Verve Jazz Ensemble that we haven't talked about already?
Well, our mission is to identify what we consider to be really beautiful melodies. Our music is something that we want to bring to both jazz newbies and jazz aficionados. I mean, we try to cover an entire spectrum of jazz introduction and also satisfying people who have a very sophisticated jazz ear. And that's not an easy thing to do. We do it by keeping our soloing crisp and to the point. We try to pick melodies that are really, really exciting, meaningful, that people can relate to. And we try to find sometimes obscure tunes and melodies that, even sophisticated jazz listeners, like, I have not heard that tune. For example, we have a tune by George Shearing on All In that I fell in love with, Midnight in the Air. And it's kind of a sleeper. So we look for music that's sort of side B, taking it from the record days, a side B classic. And we try to find music that is going to appeal to the palate of people who are new to jazz and don't know much about it, and people who are very sophisticated and have been listening to it for their whole lives.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love that because I don't listen to jazz every single day, but jazz is a big part of my record collection. I have a lot of great jazz artists through the years. And it all started back in, I guess it was 1986. I was working at a station that had me do Sunday mornings, and we used to do a feature from 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock, was called Orange Juice and Jazz. And so I was the one who was running the show, and I was like, I better learn something about jazz. And I learned really quickly, and I'm going, how come I haven't been exposed to this, beforehand? And there's just so much great jazz out there. And if there's a local jazz club, check it out. If you've got a local jazz club in your town, make sure you check it out. Support local music because there's just so many talented individuals out there. Now, the final song we're going to feature is from the 2018 album, a #1 album that you folks had called Connect the Dots. It went to #1 on the Jazz Week charts in September of 2018, spent 9 weeks in the top 10, and it was one of the top 20 of 2018. The song features, it kind of pays homage to a profession that I love, I've loved for many, many years. It's called Disc Jockey Jump. And what's the story on Disc Jockey Jump?
This is a great tune. It was written by Jerry Mulligan, and it was played by the great Gene Krupa.
Oh, really, Gene?
And obviously, as a drummer and as somebody that when I was a kid, I had a teacher who said to me, Josh, you sound like Gene Krupa. And I said, "You think I sound like Gene Krupa? Who's Gene Krupa?" That was my introduction to Gene Krupa. And so I fell in love with Krupa's playing. I didn't sound like Gene Krupa, but my teacher was trying to get me to practice or something. And as far as Krupa goes, he was the original drummer with the Benny Goodman big band.
That I didn't know.
So I'll give you 60 seconds on Gene Krupa.
Yo.
So Krupa played with Benny Goodman. This was back in the 1930s. He played the great Sing, 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 that classic song. If you're not familiar with that, go back to the Benny Goodman Orchestra's rendition of Sing, Sing, Sing at Carnegie Hall. That was maybe the most famous drum feature that had ever been recorded up to that time. Krupa's drum technique was not out of this world, but the guy could swing his ass off. He was handsome. He had a lot of energy. He had a lot of flair on the stage, and he made the drums for the first time a solo instrument. He brought it out to the front, and the energy and the vitality that Krupa brought to drumming changed the whole direction of drumming. And I love this particular song that Krupa and Jerry Mulligan recorded. I think it was recorded originally in like 1949, and it was sort of a sleeper. So I took this tune to, I think it was Tatum Greenblatt. Mm-hmm. Double check me on that. You can check the notes. And I asked Tatum to write a chart, bring it up to date, and write it for the VJE with drum breaks and so forth. And I had a blast. And this was one of my attempts to pay homage to one of my heroes, Gene Krupa, and of course the great Jerry Mulligan in Disc Jockey Jump.
Very good. This is really strange too, because you brought up Gene Krupa. I've had several drummers on the show, and I've had that name pop up more than Buddy Rich, which kind of surprises me. Gene Krupa, of course, just a heck of a drummer. And by the way, if you haven't checked out Gene Krupa's work, by all means, go to YouTube or iTunes and download some of his work. It's just absolutely fabulous. I want to thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time to be on the show today. This is I love good jazz, and you provided a great deal of it today. Thanks so very much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure, and you can have me back anytime, man. This has been a fun conversation.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.